Hi, I'm Karla Pearce, and in this episode we are going to learn all about cakes. Master baker Carolyn Bissett is going to take us through the process of baking, building, icing, and decorating. We are even going to learn a bit about wedding cakes and where they come from. Come join us, it's going to be a delicious day. Creativity and color make up the foundation of design. These elements can be translated to many different mediums, including food.
So today we made a carrot cake, and we started by combining our liquid ingredients, our sugars and our eggs and oil, and combined all that till it was smooth. Whilst that was getting smooth, we combined our solids, our flours, our baking soda, baking powder, etc. And then we combined the two together just till they were mixed. That's an important part of carrot cake, don't overmix it. And then we put in our carrots and our pineapple and mixed it up lovely and put it into the pans, and then let the magic begin. Just before you put them in the oven, you take the pan, give it a quick tap, it levels the cake and takes all the air bubbles out so you don't end up with holes in your cake. Once you've taken it out of the oven, you're going to let it cool so that you can touch the pans. So it's got about 10-15 minutes sitting on the cooling racks. Then you take it out of the pans, let it continue to cool to room temperature. Then you put it in the freezer. Always. The freezer is an important part because it locks the moisture into the cake and helps seal the crumbs. If you've ever tried to decorate a cake when it's fresh out of the oven, you pull your spatula over it, and you're pulling your cake apart, and it's not fun. Okay, so we're going to take the first layer and we're going to center it on the board. Then we're going to take our icing and we're going to put it on and smooth it with the spatula right to the edges. Then the second layer goes on, and if you want, your third layer can go on. Just keep copycatting. Then put your icing onto the top and work its way around the edges and then down the sides. And don't put it too thick at this point. You're just putting it thin to lock in all the crumbs, and this is called your crumb coat.
When designing anything, including a cake, a plan of execution is helpful.
If you name a craft, I've attempted it. I can't knit, but I can do almost everything else. In order to do this job, you have to be artsy-fartsy. You have to be willing to look at something and see what it could be and pick up a piece of fondant and go, I can do that. Sort of smush them, but don't totally smush them because you want nice big chunks. Each cake is a different piece of artwork, and even though you're doing the same pattern for 3 cakes in a row, each one is different. We've got our crumb coat on now. We're going to put the cake in the fridge for about 15 minutes or so just to let it set up and get a little bit hard. Then we bring it back out and we start putting our icing on in thicker coats. And then you can either do the swirl method, which is just putting it on loosely and letting it be rough, or you're going to smooth it down soft and smooth so that it's ready for a fondant covering.
An emotional connection to the symbolic nature of the cake helps with the creative process.
actually, a lot of what you're doing for the cake, you're thinking of who you're doing the cake for. So when you're doing a wedding cake interview and you're meeting the couple and you're seeing their personalities, when you're then doing their cake, you're going to attempt to make some of their personalities come into that cake. If you've got a very serious couple, you're going to make that cake very structured and very straight lined. Whereas if you've got a whimsical couple, you're going to make the cake reflect a little bit of that in them. So you're going to fill your icing bag, and don't fill it too full because you don't want it coming out all over the edge. You got to make sure you're holding it so it's not coming out the back end. You're going to use your finger pressure to squeeze it, and whatever you do, just keep it simple. Use the big star tip, make a nice simple border around the top, and it's ready to go. With the fondant, you're going to, first of all, color it. Unless you want it left white, then of course leave it white. When you're coloring it, just make sure you have lots of shortening on your hands because you don't want to be sticking to the fondant. And mix it in, and mix it to as much as you want it mixed. If you want it marbled, leave it marbled. If you want it solid, work it a little longer until you get a nice solid color. And then you put it onto the mat that has lots of icing sugar on it so it doesn't stick, and roll it out till it's the proper size that you need. Once it's all rolled out and even, then you're going to pick it up, put it on your cake, and smooth it out. I feel like a little bit of me goes out with every cake that I do. I just did a baby's first birthday cake for a little girl that shouldn't have made it to her first year. And I met the mom and I met the little girl. And as we're working on this cake, you're just in love with this little girl that this cake is for, and your emotion goes into it, and you know who you're making the cake for, and you let it show. Okay, so in order to get the quilt look, you have to, first of all, you must draw it out on paper, and you have to know exactly your 1/2 inch mark, your 1 inch mark, and you mark it all the way around meticulously on the cake. And you make sure that your lines all match up. So you've matched, your top row is marked at 1 inch, your bottom row is marked at 1 inch on the 1/2 inch, and then you're gonna look at your sheet that you always have beside you, and you're going to mark it with a straight plastic ruler and just indent it so that you get the quilted look.
The beauty of the cake is paramount to the symbolism and ceremony of the cake cutting. It can be a very important part of family life. It connects us to change and celebration.
One of my other cakes that I made, and it's for personal reasons, but it told a story. It was an engagement cake. And the couple had gone up to the top of a mountain to where a waterfall was, and he was going to propose there, but there was too many people. So they decided to go home. She went and sat on the couch. He came into the living room, went down on one knee, and proposed. The couple, she works at our wildlife park, so she's all about the animals. So instead of making people, we made bears. Knowing that it's telling their story, and when they see it, they're going to remember that moment. It told the story. It was awesome. Okay, if you take your cake as it is right now and put the top on, it will sink, and that's not fun. So you need to put doweling, and I just use pieces of pine doweling that you get at your hardware store. Cut it to the thickness of the cake. So you've taken a big toothpick or a bamboo skewer, you've put it to the bottom of your cake, you've marked it with a pencil, you know how tall to make your doweling. You cut 4 of them and put them so that they're centered in your cake. If you've got an 8-inch cake, you're going to put them at the 6 and 2 inch marks inside the cake. And then once you've got those in, put them into their marks, then you can carefully place your 6-inch cake on top of that, move it around, find the center, and then you take another, usually just a bamboo skewer. You don't need a big doweling for this, unless it's a really tall cake. You take a bamboo skewer and go down the middle of both cakes so that it doesn't flop sideways or fall off itself in transport. The last thing we did was just a border trim. Now the border on the bottom of your 6-inch is to cover up the fact that the cakes don't always meet perfectly. So you look at your cake and you see, okay, you've got some little, raggedy edges. How big of a border do I need to make? And then you decide, are you going to make it out of icing? And if you are, you're just going to use your piping bag like we did for the cream cheesecake. And you're going to pipe stars, or you're going to pipe little dots and do it that way. Or for some more elaborate cakes like wedding cakes, you'll use a piece of silk ribbon and just attach that to the cake, and that covers all mistakes but makes the cake look beautiful. To me, it's another cake in the order book. To you, it's a very important event. You're doing a baby reveal. You're going to lift that cake up and it's going to be pink or blue. That's a very defining moment in your life. Your child just turned 1. You just got engaged. You're marrying the love of your life. Every cake tells something. And that's what my job is.
Creativity can take many different forms, and baking and decorating cakes is certainly one of them. In fact, it's one of the few art forms that you can enjoy all 5 senses. And thank you so much, Carolyn, for inviting us to your kitchen today. It was absolutely wonderful. I'm Karla Pearce, and thanks for watching.